Folks, welcome to Hacks, Skills, and Mods. First off, I want to thank our veterans. Thank you so much for the sacrifices you and your family have made so we can live in a wonderful country. I know we've got our problems in this country, but it's still the greatest country there is. Thank you so much for making that happen. Now, today's video is on the AK-47, more specifically my AK-47 and what I did to make it mine. As the old saying goes, it's not mine till it's modified. Well, it's mine now. I'm going to go over these things very quickly. Try to keep the video short. I will do other videos and break down a few of the things I've done in each video and go into deeper detail. Problem I see with a lot of gun videos is they pretty much turn into a video about how much money can we spend on this gun. Some of us don't have a lot of money to spend. So this channel is really about how to use what you got and make it do what you need it to do, and do it on a budget in a lot of cases. There are some things that there is no budget for. It just costs, and there are other things that you can do for yourself. You can make them work, manipulate, modify, tweak, whatever you want to call it. So I'm going to go over, this video is really going to be about the list of things that I've done. I'm going to go over them pretty quick. I do have a cheat sheet in case so I don't forget anything. Flash hider, Yankee Hill machine. Got mine a long time ago. It's got the teeth on it. I really like it. It does a wonderful job. The front sight, I think it's a good idea to make that a little more visible in low light, so I painted the back of it with whiteout. It's inside the protective ears. Whiteout's not granite, but the protective ears pretty well keep it from getting scraped off, but if it does, it's whiteout. It's $2 or 2 bottles for $1, so not a great deal of expense to fix that. I got a tack light off of Amazon. I paid less than $20 for this tack light. It came with a tail switch and a pressure switch, and it's 120 lumens. You know, all this 300 and 400 lumen stuff, you know, it's not a landing light on an aircraft, it's a tack light on a rifle. The part of the beauty of military weapons is they pretty much snap together for field stripping purposes. When you do something to a rifle that hinders that, to me that's taken away from the beauty of the design. So all these quad rails, I bought one, I tried it, didn't like it. AK-47s are front heavy anyway. When you put more metal up here, you compound that problem, and couple that with they virtually always have to have additional tools to take them apart. That's more tools you have to carry in the field. That's more weight in your pack. That's a tool you can lose or break. The screws that you take out with that tool can be lost. Not a good thing in my opinion. Anyway, I've mounted the tack light to the gas tube with a radiator hose clamp. 2 of them at Lowe's for $1.50. Any parts house has got hose clamps. The only downfall is hose clamps are shiny, so I wrapped it with duct tape to keep it from shining. If anybody knows where to get flat black or flat olive drab green hose clamps, please let me know, because I would love to have some of those. Anyway, we wrap the cord up and tape it to keep it out of getting hung in anything. And pressure switch a lot of times mount to a surface, which means they protrude. They can get ripped off of the light, or just ripped off of the weapon. And in that case, if it's dark and your pressure switch is not where you put it and you're trying to find it in the dark, that is a bad day. So I took a box cutter and a chisel and I routed out inside the handguard a place for the pressure switch to lay, and I covered it with duct tape. I know this is going to sound cheesy, but I used a good quality of duct tape. There are crappy qualities of duct tape and they don't work very well. So this is a good duct tape. It's 3M. I got it at Lowe's. It's the dark gray. It's got really good adhesion, so this holds the pressure switch in, and it just barely protrudes past the surface so you can find the button. The handguard, I vented it by drilling holes in the top, and I fluted the holes around the gas tube, and in the bottom I drilled holes in the bottom of the handguard and fluted them around the barrel. And that allows a chimney effect, so that cool air can get drawn in the bottom and hot air can go out the top. And you know, heat is a bad thing, whether it's hardware or software. Enough heat will kill anything on the planet. So drawing that heat off is a better thing. Charging handles on AKs. You can get a charging handle knob that is bigger and has etching in it for traction. I had a piece of fuel line laying around, and I took some Dawn and water, and I mixed 1 drop of Dawn and several drops of water, and I coated the outside of the charging handle, the inside of the fuel line, and forced it on there as far as I could get it, and then cut it off. And then I continued to slice it off until I got the fuel line even with the end of the charging handle, and this works wonderfully. It's got traction because it's rubber. Oil doesn't affect it. If you get oil on it and you're cleaning your rifle, it just soaks it in. It's not a big deal. It's been on there for about 4,000 rounds, so it's not coming off. I've never had to put it back on. Inside, I use the Wolf 25% extra power spring. I think it's 25%. Anyway, most of your recoil comes from the bolt carrier slamming into the trunnion, and that helps minimize it. Plus, it gives you a little more positive feeding going forward if your spring gets a little weak, or you have some issue that will overpower it and push it on home. I use the Texas Weapons System receiver cover. I know there are mixed reviews. I like mine. Mine holds 0. Larry Vickers done a video, and the Spetsnaz in Russia use this receiver cover. So I'm sure they're going to be a lot harder on it than I ever will be. If it works for them, chances are it's going to work for me. One guy put up a video, and the rear of this cover had some lateral movement in it. He was complaining about that. In the instructions, they tell you this tab right here, that they cut this little slot for a reason. If you have lateral movement in the rear of this cover, you take a pair of pliers and you bend that tab in just a little at a time until it takes up that slack, and that's what it's there for. I have a target in Hawk Creek Armory in London, Kentucky. They have a Wall of Fame, which is a corkboard with targets on it. And to get your target on that Wall of Fame, you have to have 3 shots or more, so a 1 MOA or less. And I have a 4-shot group of .743, which is just under 1/4 of an inch, if I remember the numbers correctly. That's it. So that's 4 rounds in a 3/4 of an inch group. So I don't think I'm having any problems retaining 0. I did shoot it with a 3 to 9 power scope mounted on this, so I have no issues with it. I don't like a red dot. I would prefer the Caveman red dot. That's a personal choice. A lot of people like them. I'm not trying to criticize them, but this is my rifle. We modify it the way I want it. You modify yours the way you want it. On the bottom, the mag well. I took a brass hammer and I beveled the mag well on 3 sides and polished it with 600 grit sandpaper. The pin that holds the front of the lug in here, I polished it with 600 grit sandpaper. The edge of the mag catch bracket, I angled the inner edge on both sides towards the middle so that the corners of the rear bolt or the rear mag lug would not blunt up against them and funnel in. The mag catch, I put some duct tape, 3 or 4 layers around the release part. If you're doing mag changes, a lot of drills, dry fire drills, that gets old on the thumb. So that little bit of duct tape actually helps out quite a bit. On the trigger, any weapon I've ever worked on, you can greatly improve the trigger just by polishing the pieces. If it moves, here's the policy. If it moves when you pull that trigger, polish it. Polish it to a mirror finish, and it'll improve your trigger greatly. And I mean right down to the pinholes in the sear and the pin that goes through the sear. Polish the mating surfaces with 600 grit sandpaper. On the front, I took a piece of leather and cut it to fit between the trigger guard and the front of the trigger just a little further than it takes to reset the trigger. And I duct taped in place. That takes up my creep in this trigger. Behind it, I'd cut a piece that is just a little thinner than what it would take to fire the weapon. And I duct taped it around the grip, and that takes up our over travel. So between the polishing and the taking up of the creep and the taking up of the over travel, I didn't put a single part in this gun to make the trigger better. And I have a really nice trigger on this rifle. The grip is the standard plastic grip with kind of square corners that comes from Century Arms on this rifle. I am part Cherokee and we like our natural products, so I used a piece of leather cord, soaked it in water and stretched it. Leather will stretch good when it's wet, and then as it dries it tightens up. So I wrapped this in a coarse spiral up and then wrapped it in a really tight spiral down the whole way, keeping it stretched, and then tied it in a square knot to hold it. In case you're wondering, that black bead is buffalo bone, or excuse me, buffalo horn, and the white bead is bone, and that's, again, is a native thing. On the stock, I think that in very close quarters, being able to take nearly a foot off your rifle is a good thing. The battery, the TacLite takes a 123 battery. I have a spare here. This stock, I had to modify it to fit this trunnion, and the tang that is on a lot of AKs, this one does not have. It's got a bolt that goes through the stock like a shotgun. So anyway, a battery fits pretty well down in that tang groove, and I wrap it with duct tape and put a tab on it, so I have a pull tab to rip it out of there, and I can have a spare battery on the rifle. Not a fan of a red dot. Do have one. Do have it zeroed for this rifle. If I choose to use it, I can put it on here instead of up here. Again, the front heavy thing. Back here, you're minimizing that to helping offset it. Up here, you're compounding it. The sling, a good friend of mine I really respect told me that it would be a good idea to have a quick release on at least one end of your sling. This is a military grade pinch buckle. This did not come from a big box store. I wrapped it with paracord around the original sling loop, and I wrapped it spirally very tightly and tied it in a square knot. And it's not bolted down, but it's pretty solid. I don't like the cables that have a lot of movement in them and twist and so forth. This one doesn't twist. On the back of the sling, I put it on the right side as you're firing the weapon. This is for bump overs and left-handed shooting. You can, if your sling is on this side, when you transition to left-hand or bump over, your sling actually tightens up and chokes you. If it's on this side, it loosens when you switch to left-handed, so it doesn't choke you. Good idea not to choke yourself out. Now, at this moment, I am going to reference my list to make sure I did not forget anything. Oh, there's a feed ramp inside this rifle it did not come with. Like on the Mac 90s, they have a feed ramp beveled into the chamber. I beveled one in with a Dremel tool and, you guessed it, 600 grit sandpaper, and polished it down. I beveled it, took the edges off of it with a Dremel tool, and then polished it with 600 grit sandpaper. Didn't do that because I was having malfunctions, because I did not. Why I did it is because I noticed when I was cleaning it, the face of the chamber had brass dots on it, which meant the bullets were bludgeoning up against that, and I didn't think that was a good idea, so I put a feed ramp in it, and that works wonderfully. The safety, I polished the button, I polished the track that it slides in, and I angled the detent holes to the center, on the side towards the center, to make the safety work better, and I bent it out just a hair. I took a piece of pipe and cut out one side of it and put it under here, because this is the cheek riser or cheek support is bolted back here and it cantilevers out. It had a lot of movement, so I put that under there and taped it tight, and that holds that pretty solid there. I clean and lubricate my AK with synthetic motor oil. I'll go into more detail about that. Synthetic motor oil is actually slick, and I can back up that statement, because petroleum motor oil is not slick. I promise you, I can prove it to you. I do use white lithium grease on some parts, because grease is thicker and it stays where you put it more, and oil has a tendency to move out with friction or drain. And I have had zero issues because of this, and it's a lot less expensive than gun oils and gun cleaners. These rifles are very abusable, and mainly I brush and swab the barrel and chamber with oil to clean it, and then I mop it to get out the excess, and that's pretty much all I do to clean it. I don't have any trouble in the receivers, very little anything in there. It's been 2,000 rounds since I cleaned the receiver, so 2,500 actually. So I don't have any issue with that. And that is my video on the things that I have done to my AK to get mine. Oh, that's lovely. Anyway, questions, comments, I'll be glad to hear them. If you would be so kind as to like, share, and subscribe to my channel, I would greatly appreciate it. Any questions or comments you have, please list them, and I'll get back to you just as quick as I can. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful day.